misconceptions about why Chevy and General Motors stay with the pushrod overhead valve engines. Now, a lot of people say it's a tribute to their customers, that, you know, their customers prefer pushrods. That's about 50% of the picture there. They really also stick to it because the manufacturing cost of overhead valve engines is less than single overhead cam and dual overhead cam. So there's more moving parts in a single overhead cam engine, as you can see, and especially with a dual overhead cam. Now, my preference, most of these videos are single overhead cam, showing the cam gears. Now, one confusing thing that a lot of people don't know is there's certain parts that are only in a single overhead valve configuration that are not in a dual overhead cam, and they're also not in a pushrod engine. So that would be a rocker arm shaft, and cam followers. So in a dual overhead cam, you have an extra set of camshafts, so there is no need for rocker arms and rocker arm shafts. In a pushrod engine, you have one cam in block directly above the crankshaft, so there are no rocker arms in that configuration. Now, as you can see, in the single overhead camshaft, the second biggest misconception is the valve train. So some people will say dual overhead cam breathes better. That's partially true. It revs higher. See, in a single overhead cam with forked rocker arms, you can have 24 valves in a V8. You can have 4 valves per cylinder if you use a forked rocker arm. So it doesn't necessarily breathe better because you can have the same amount of valves. But when you get to the higher RPMs, the dual overhead cam does rev a little better, has a higher red line. The single overhead cam, probably to summarize why I think single overhead cam should stick around, is it's good for low to mid-range, just like a pushrod, and it's also good for mid-range, just like a dual overhead cam. So it's sort of the best of both worlds. It's just a little more to manufacture it than a pushrod engine, a little less to manufacture than a dual overhead cam. So reliability, it's a little easier to work on. It's a little more advanced than a pushrod. That's why the SOHC Cammer from Ford is such a famous engine, because it was in the 1960s. They knew single overhead cam was better than pushrod, but they just knew it was going to cost them more to manufacture it, so they stuck with the pushrod and eventually switched to the single